Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the next episode of Stalevar. Yeah, this is our cooperation project between Silvarret, Operateur, and me. In today's episode, unfortunately, I am alone. You have to deal with me and no one else. The reason for this is that Silv is again on holidays. He's been visiting quite a lot of Europe this year, so that's the reason why he couldn't make it to today's episode. But he'll be with us next week again. So is Operateur. He would be there, but we have a little bit of an issue finding time to record together, basically because both of our schedules at the moment are super busy and real life is taking a lot of time from us, which is, normal. And since we all do it as a hobby, it's pretty much what you can expect. So it's not always easy, despite being in the same time zone. That's what I wanted to say. I was mixing up letters here. It's still kind of hard and tough to find the times, especially when someone is on holidays again. Silv, huh? No, just kidding. So this week I'm taking over myself, and I think it will be still a very interesting episode for you guys to watch, because I did something that I really didn't plan that, to be honest. I had a completely different idea in mind, but usually in advance to every episode I'm doing some research online. I'm just browsing through Google Images and Google Maps and just looking into old Russian factories and Russian different kind of stuff. Not only factories, but also old military outposts and kind of these kind of things, and to just get some inspiration. And then I stumbled across a very interesting oil refinery, and I really love the look of it. I have to admit, it's thanks to Mr. Sean McBeard, a little shout out to him, that he made some good amendments about my first design I had, that it wasn't too Russian looking. Because I was fooled by the Google image search, I kind of went for a design that was only in kind of a... I think it was America or so, but it just, it was pretended that it was Russian architecture and stuff, so it was kind of weird. So I was fooled by the image, and so he sent me some other cool images which I can use to make it all look a bit more Russian in the end. And you will see that in kind of the second part, like the second 10 minutes of today's episode will be a lot more about the actual Russian design. However, this building over here is pretty much very Russian inspired, so it's a very, very small little shed just here, which is a side building of the actual refinery thing, which I thought would be a cool integration, because everything else is just very huge and very big about this whole factory area. And I thought it would be a cool idea to make something smaller, to just pretend that this whole area, the whole factory complex, has been grown over time. So usually what happens with these kind of areas, they are most likely very, very big, and they are a little bit like outside of the actual cities, and they just, if it wasn't a project for one specific need, they grow over time. They start off smaller, and then over time they become bigger and bigger once the whole company grows and the whole demand rises, and then so the whole factory grows, and so also architectural styles might vary. And I was thinking that this little building over here might have already been existing at this area, and then just has been repurposed to be like the side building of the little refinery. I'm thinking that some of the machinery, like the control machinery, can be inside this building or within the building, but everything else is just outside, and we'll see how this turns out in the end eventually. It was pretty cool to build this one, to be honest, because it was something unusual and something that I may well be using also for Napali as well. So maybe I'm going to steal something from over here, because some of the elements are pretty neat. It really looks decent in the end, as like really nice oil tanks with some pipe work and cables and all that kind of stuff. I think with a little bit of a design change, you can easily take this towards another area. But you can see that I was actually struggling for pieces at the beginning. The main reason for this is, and maybe this is one of the single things I don't really like about general games like that, which only use polished and new textures, if you will. So once you build something very rundown, you would love to have some decals, actually, like you have in City Skylines. If you look videos of City Skylines, especially from the likes of $2.20 or Strict Toaster or Fluxtrans or whoever you want to watch of these great builders, or Beast Krickelhausen or whoever you want to watch, they basically never ever have one single road that is entirely polished and nice and clean, because it just doesn't exist. And the more rundown area you have, the more decals you would love to use, because it makes the whole thing look so much more realistic if things are looking rundown. And this is quite hard to achieve in Planet Coaster, since we don't essentially have decals. And decals are something, if you don't know what I mean by decals, basically decals are a semi-transparent texture that you just put on top of the existing texture to make it more look down, rundown. That's the terminology I was going for. So just imagine you have a pile of concrete in the ground, and it's like entirely perfectly seamless. Then you would love to have some broken elements in there. You would love to have some areas where there is a bit more dirt on the ground. You would love to have some areas where there potentially the concrete is broken because of the heat. You would love to have some areas where there might be something falling down that destroyed parts of it, or just pretty simple, have some color on the ground from paint workings or whatever. So these kind of things make the whole scene look immediately a lot more realistic. If you just go, for example, into 3D modeling and you look into these wonderful renderings, a rendering never looks realistic unless you have some details in that make the whole scene look less perfect. The real world isn't perfect, you know. Maybe potentially when you get a new room, which is like done, just 10 seconds done, it might look perfect for a second, but even then you will have some corners that are not perfectly fine, some paint that isn't dried perfectly, you would have some streams in there from paint that was a little bit too thick on the wall, and all these kind of things you don't really notice at first glance, but you notice when they're missing. And these are the things that make design and making realistic things really stand out from making gorgeous looking perfect design, if you will. Make a painting of an animal when nothing is wrong about the animal doesn't look realistic. As soon as you start adding scratches and some scars and some some things in the fur, for example, that doesn't look nice, it makes the animal look a lot more realistic. And this is what I want to do with all my builds in Planet Coaster as well, but it's pretty hard to achieve in the game when you haven't got the right things at hand. So you can see that I used a lot of different pipes, and I used these simple art shapes. I used several different iterations of pipes to make it look a little bit more clicked together rather than always using the same thing. I was using all these kind of things, and I did vary the color ever so slightly. Like every piece has it's just a very tiny bit different, but the color is always like slightly changed, so it looks like the weathering effect has had a different effect on all of the single pieces, so it makes the whole thing look a little bit more worn down than it actually is with the right textures. And yeah, I also looked for all the sci-fi pieces, because some of them have some used textures to them which look pretty decent, to be honest. And so yeah, that's what I did. And yeah, anyways, it kind of is a struggle to achieve this in Planet Coaster, but you know, the game is always about struggle and about finding solutions for the limitations we have, and this is what drives creativity, as I said quite often already. And yeah, I'm just fairly happy that I am quite happy with the result at the end. I'm quite confident that it looks decent, but you can see that I'm as of now I'm just doing it with the pieces I already used all over the place already, to make the ground look a little bit more used, like having all these little rocks shimmer through, and just put some dirt here and there, just put some flowers, like actually not flowers, but it's like worn down flowers, as if there was, like, you know, imagine the concrete just broke and open up, and then there is a little bit of, how is it even, it's not foliage, it's like this unnecessarily greenish stuff that grows everywhere where you don't need it. In German you call it Unkraut, but I'm not really sure if there's an English word for it even. But anyways, this is what you would see there, and it's definitely something that I don't like, but for the sake of being realistic, I do like it quite a lot. Anyways, we are now approaching the second part of the build, and as I said, I had some good hints from Mr. Sean McBeard. And by the way, if you want to check out his channel, it is a German channel, so it's not international, but he's featuring most of the times at the moment Planet Zoo videos in German. So if you are German, because quite a lot of people watch my channel being German, it would be kind of cool to check him out, because there's a lot of German content about Planet Zoo and also Planet Coaster that you might want to check out, because I am not doing any German content at the moment, so you might want to watch it, I don't know. Anyways, let's continue with today's build. As I said, he gave me some real good instructions about Russian buildings, because he's living in Berlin, but he's quite often visiting these Russian areas and old Russian areas, and he's quite familiar with the building styles, so that's pretty cool, and I always use him as a little bit of a judge here as well. Sending over some screenshots and just making sure that he approves, so to say. And yeah, again, he sent me a screenshot, and there was also something like that, which is like somewhat of an overpass system. I don't know if there would be even pipeworks in. I might want to put some pipeworks in later, but for now I just built this kind of overpass thingy, which is like kind of a thing which is done with steel supports, and yeah, I thought it might be a little bit higher, and I just put this down. Again, in such a kind of factory complex as you have it here, you need a lot of transportation devices, and this is one of the things that is quite often used for transportation. And right now, looking at it, it would make totally sense to just make a connection between this pipework system, which carries around the oil or whatever. Then I guess it would be the most clever thing to do that. But yeah, as of now, I didn't connect that, so maybe I'm doing this off screen or in the next build, because there's still some stuff missing then. Anyways, yeah, it was just for me a little bit of a test to see how this works. I didn't want to have something that is too high, because I wanted to maintain the wonderful skyline of the coaster, because the whole entrance area and stuff will be covered up by Operateur. He's going to make a wonderful entrance building, I'm pretty sure he will, and so I wanted to make sure that as long as we cover these things up, I still wanted to have one area where you really have a super decent look at the skyline. And so this is the side I just tackled here. So basically I did tackle the complete left hand side of the entire complex. I actually opened up the little lake that Operateur did at the beginning, since I thought, okay, you know what, if there is like a harbor thing going on with all these kind of cranes and delivery stuff, we need a connection to the open sea, right? So this is why I decided to make this river go over here. And I just found, while doing this, this is basically a random build I'm doing over here, because I found this railroad I put down in the very first episode I made, which I had in mind that it could be something to connect the railroad, obviously, which can also deliver some goods to this area. So we have the one area which is on the left hand side of the factory. There is the delivery post for example, trucks. And on this hand side, I wanted to make it for the trains, and I wanted to make it look run down and broken. And so, as you can see, I'm making this bridge over here, which would have been a bridge, connecting the two sides of the river, but it needed to be, you needed to open it up for the boats to pass by. And so this is the reason why I made this kind of opening up construction here. But I made it look basically broken, so that, it just kind of is there, but it just doesn't do anything, except looking broken down, right? So this is why I left it here. Just made it overgrown a tiny bit, and also worked a little bit with the terrain painting later on to make it look a bit more connected. But I have to admit, it looks pretty cool. Just like a little detail here, which you don't necessarily need, but I just like to have it because it just made the whole scene look a little bit more realistic and a little bit more, it gave it just a little bit more purpose. But yeah, so the last bit of today's episode will be a little of foliage work, but also we will start off with one building. I'm not going to finish that one building, mainly because I ran out of time, because this episode already is pretty long and I needed to speed it up quite a bit, and I left out the complete first iteration of this refinery. So yeah, quite a lot of stuff I left out, and still it is quite a long episode. And plus I forgot basically to record like I think half an hour or even 45 minutes while I was streaming. So the very first bit of this episode is completely left out because I basically have no recording of that. So yeah, it's a little bit nasty this time, but yeah, it worked out in the end. So I'm fairly happy. Yeah, I just plopped down some of the containers here. I'm not entirely sure if we leave it, but this is upon Silv and Operateur to decide. I just wanted to have something here to make it look less empty, but apparently I'm not entirely sure if I'm super happy with how it turned out to look. I just plopped down some pieces and I wasn't too happy with it, so I made like a rundown car to the side. Maybe we need to make it all look even more overgrown. I'm not entirely sure, but maybe some VFX effects will help with doing it. In general, I'm not entirely sure if this ever makes sense to look like that, or maybe Operateur wants to build another crane that is positioned over here. Would maybe also make sense, I don't know, but for now I just wanted to make sure that this area looks finished, because this is still a completely gigantic complex we are building here and we need to move forward, and this is why I decided to go a little bit for less detail but a little bit more progress in here, at least for the second part of this video where I'm doing the foliage stuff. As you can see right now, I'm just willing to make this all look decent enough to be really picturesque and really nice, but as less detailed as we can have to make it still look really nice from a distance. The refinery itself is really detailed, like super detailed. If you go close, there's a lot of stuff to explore, but if you're standing on the other side of the river, it basically should just look very nice from over there. So you don't need to go too much into foliage work and just plop down 7 million rocks to make it look like a bit more detailed and whatnot. So yeah, this is the overview. As you can see, I will put in a lovely panning shot at the end of this area so you can really see what this looks like. And yeah, at the very end I was putting even more details into this biggest tower in the back of this building. I still didn't like the very bright little surrounding on the top of the tower, so I basically covered it up with some steel beams and some other items, because I just wasn't too happy about this, and I have to admit that I'm now quite happy. Yeah, as I said, I need to still put some pipes in, but what I did with this overpass thing, I put some cables below so that you have some cables hanging down. I always feel like having these cables from a distance look really good, because you have a little bit of a detail going towards the bottom part of this build and making it look less copy-paste-ish, because it's really repetitive if you always have the same piece, and there is nothing that really breaks free from this copy-paste optic. So I'm always happy to just put in some little things that make it look a bit more varying rather than repetitive. But yeah, we are already at the very last build of today's episode, and this is a simple warehouse in a very simple style. I just wanted to try something here with a little, it's not really a trick, but it's something I wanted to do for a while. Basically already spoiling because this is pretty simple. I wanted to have an open roof, or actually not open, but like a semi-transparent roof with some glass pieces in there, and just put some of the storage items within the building to make it really look like as if there was some storage going on indoors, but not make it too detailed. It should be just like a effect if you pass by and the coaster passes by a few times, and then you can look inside the building and it really looks like at a glance as if there was really a storage building in, but in fact it's just a scenery piece, like a very big scenery piece, but in fact it's just a scenery piece. We may want to add some more doors and gates to the front. I didn't do that yet, but this is like a little detail I could do in the future easily. But here's what I just meant. I was just putting some pieces in to just pretend there is a little bit of storage going on in some pallets, some oil drums, nothing major, and then I was putting the glass pieces on top of it to make it only look a little bit more semi-transparent, so that you know, at a glance you can't really see that there is nothing going on. Anyways, that's the end of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, next week we will let you know on which channel. I'm not entirely sure if it will be on Silv's channel or Operateur's channel, we have to see, but it will be with the three of us again, so look forward to this, because I am looking forward to this, and let me know in the comments down below how you liked today's build and if you have anything to critique, so let me know. And now enjoy the panning shot, and we see each other and talk to each other in the next episode. Bye guys.